Thank you.
All right. Well, happy Friday, everybody. And welcome to the Back Catalog Listening Party. My name is Mother Banjo, one of your hosts.
My name is Anthony Eric, the other host.
And today we have joining us here in Lisle, Illinois from the Folk Alliance Regional Midwest Conference, David LaMotte.
What a treat to be with y'all. Thank you.
And I say it's Friday afternoon because this airs on Friday afternoons, but really it's Saturday morning. And after a couple very late nights of showcasing and jamming at this folk circus is really a better term than a folk conference. I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah, that lives up to the description.
And but we're really happy to be doing a live taping here with a bunch of folkies and fans and industry professionals and artists, and we're excited to be here and get a chance to be with one of our guests in person, because this show normally happens all remotely from different locations of the country and the world, and getting to be in the room with the artists is really special. So
Yeah.
Three-dimensional physical space. It's crazy.
it happens sometimes.
And if you're new to the show, this is our weekly musical happy hour. It airs 4 o'clock on Friday, so it is a little different here, but we have some tasty coffee here. So if you're enjoying something out there in internet land, let us know what you're having when in the comments.
Yeah, beverages, snacks, and of course, most importantly for me during these conferences is water.
Yeah, I didn't think of that. So what we do every week is we get together with our favorite artists and we listen to music from their back catalog, albums that aren't being currently promoted by the media and everybody, but are just treasures, artwork that needs to be appreciated again. And David, we're so happy that you could come and be with us today to talk music.
Me too. I was thinking this morning as I was getting ready for this that it's just such a generous, lovely invitation. It's kind of like somebody saying, "Hey, would you sit with me and show me your wedding photos and tell me stories about the people in the pictures?" It's such a beautiful, warm invitation. So thanks.
Well, we didn't ask you for your wedding photos, but now I kind of want to see your wedding photos.
Year.
Okay,
Yeah.
we'll make a date and we'll just look at your wedding
Special
photos.
edition.
There'll be a special workshop at the conference. Look at David Lamotte's wedding photos. Well, I'm sure many folks here at the Farm Conference know who you are. You've been making music for a long time. But for folks who maybe are less familiar with your music, joining us online, maybe you can give us a little 2-minute origin story of, where did David LaMotte come from? And maybe not existentially, but physically, where you came from and how you fell into making music, and in particular, what led up to this record.
Yeah, so I was born in Norfolk, Virginia. My folks moved to Florida, to Sarasota, Florida, when I was a year old, and I decided I'd go too. And lived there till I was about 15 in there somewhere, and then moved to Roanoke, Virginia. Did high school there, went to college at James Madison in Virginia. But through all those years, my grandfather had bought this old mountain cottage, not insulated, old wooden place in Montreat, North Carolina, which is like 2 miles from where I live now in Black Mountain, North Carolina. And my whole life, I kind of felt like my soul lived there and my body went to visit once a year for a week or two. And so when I got out of college, I just moved right there, and I've been there 33 years now. Yeah.
And music, has that always been, part of your life? How did that get started for you?
I'm the fourth of 4 kids. I'm the baby, but in my family, they all come in a nice big clump, and then there's a big conspicuous gap, and then I was an oops baby. It took me the longest time to figure that out, but in my family they call me Group 2, right? So I kind of exactly. So I kind of grew up listening. My musical influences are sort of half a generation off. I grew up listening to my older siblings' music, and so all that influenced who I am. And my sisters in particular were listening to a lot of really good singer-songwriters, Neil Young and Carole King and, all this delicious 70s folk pop stuff. And those songs made me cry. They were moving to me. And I never would have considered that I could do that, but it mattered, right, as a listener. And my brother was listening to like Pink Floyd and Southern rock, and Neil Young was somewhere between the siblings, and all that stuff got in me and shows up in my music from time to time. But it's always mattered to me. And I always feel like when I'm talking to young people, the question isn't would you like to do this for a living? The question is, do you see any possibility? Because a lot of them, you ask 100 people, would you like to have your job be making up songs and traveling around and singing them for people and they clap for you and pay your rent? Like, most people would say, yeah, that sounds pretty good. But if you ask people, does that seem like something that would be possible? Then most people say no. And so it was the possibility that was the revelation for me along the line. So.
And the record we're going to revisit today that you picked, and some folks who are maybe newer to the show might not know that we invite the artist, but then the artist picks the album and the songs that we revisit. We don't guide them in a certain direction or anything. And I think that's one of the special things, is just even what the selection means to you. So I'd love to know, why was this the album that you wanted to revisit? It's called Change. It came out in 2006. Why was this the album you wanted to talk about?
For me, it's a really interesting record. I kind of drew really tight lines around how we were going to make the record. At the suggestion of Carrie Estrin, actually, who was doing some management work with me at the time, and she had the idea for how to approach this album. It's my 10th record, and I was saying to her, as a manager conversation, I've made a lot of records. Like, how do I make this one special? What am I going to do that I haven't done before? Certainly it's new songs, but what are we going to do? And she said, David, if you could go on the road with any small band arrangement, what would it be? And I said, off the top of my head, without much consideration, I think a really good, versatile percussionist who could do kind of world music stuff and also more traditional kick it, and a cellist, a really versatile cellist who could do the really emotive, deep, rich stuff, but also be funky and play, like a slap bass line on a cello and that kind of stuff. And she said, I think you should make that record.
Nice.
And so we decided to draw this really tight box around the production. And this is my 10th record. I'd made a lot of records that are big production and lots of people on it. And she said, what happens if you give yourself that box to live in? And so there are no sounds on this record that aren't human voices, acoustic guitar, percussion, or cello. But then the challenge was, how many different textures can we get out of those four things, right? So we've got pads of vocals, we've got cellos being played in all kinds of crazy things, crazy ways. I did prepared guitar with a credit card woven into my strings, so it sounds like a kalimba, and we had all kinds of fun saying, okay, now with these restrictions, how big can we go?
It's amazing how the restrictions can open up the creativity.
Exactly,
Yeah.
That's precisely it. There's this lovely story about Carl Sandburg and Robert Frost and this correspondence they had, and Sandburg wrote to Frost and said, Robert, just loosen up, man. Don't be restricted by all this form and structure and stuff. Just write some free verse. And Frost wrote back and said, I would sooner play tennis without a net. So there's value in the restrictions sometimes.
That's a good one. I'm still processing that.
Well, let's give folks a taste of some of this record, because I'm jonesing for some music, because, here at Farm, we haven't had enough music. But we haven't gotten to experience this version of David LaMotte at this conference, because I don't think you brought a cellist and a percussionist with you.
Sadly, I didn't. There's some awesome ones
Yes.
here, but yeah, this is actually the song we're going to play first is the one with the credit card and the strings. So.
Excellent.
Nice.
So the first song, is History Teacher, right?
Oh, no, sorry, I got it wrong. Yes, History Teacher.
is that
It's
what
not
we're
the
doing?
first song, but we are going to do History Teacher.
Okay.
Sorry.
So we're going to do History Teacher. Is there anything quick you want to say about it, or you want to talk about it after we listen?
My nephew was in high school, and he was 15 years old and wearing size 15 shoes. And he got drafted on the basketball team. So I was going to basketball games for the first time since I was in high school. And the sensory experience of a high school gym basketball game was amazing to me, right? There was just so many memories from my own childhood. All my insecurities came right up, it was all right there. And watching kids play under the bleachers, and it was really powerful. And I wrote this song about that, and about the way, some of the toxic ways that sports matter to people, actually, is where we're really going with this.
All right, let's give it a listen. This is David LaMotte, History Teacher, on the Back Catalog Listening Party.
High school basketball, Friday night,
Little kids playing under the bleachers. And the coach is a history teacher. Nothing looks great under fluorescent lights. The home team's looking half decent tonight. That one's my nephew. Which boy is yours? Number 12. He's one of the new guys. And his age is the same as his shoe size. Little boys watching their brothers, strutting and trying to look tougher, hoping they'll grow tall enough for high school basketball Friday night. And we can't understand the June speakers, but the coach is a history teacher. Do you see 23? That whole row is his relatives. His mom looks sad, sitting over there next to his red-faced dad, trying to hold back the expletives. The kid's not bad, but he's not resurrecting his dad's old broken dreams. See how he screams. 3 generations in tow. His grandfather almost went pro, and it looks like the roots will take hold. So it's root for the home team, 'cause if they don't win, he'll be shamed. It's not only a game, it's high school basketball Friday night. Hear the shouts and the squeaks of the sneakers, and the coach is a history teacher. Yeah, the coach is a history teacher.
All right. David LaMotte with History Teacher from his 2006 record Change, which we are revisiting today on the back catalog listening party, which we are coming to you from the Folk Alliance Regional Midwest Conference, the Farm Conference in Lisle, Illinois, just outside Chicago. David LaMotte joining us in person in 3D version. Normally we do this remotely from our different homes and screens, and we're so happy to have him here to talk about this album. And as you mentioned before we started listening, just voice, acoustic guitar, cello, and percussion, and getting that low-end cello at the end was so beautiful. I'd love to know the cello, and I know it might be different on different tracks, but was there multiple tracks of that, or was it just one part?
On that song, there were a couple of tracks. I think it wasn't full lush. We've got full orchestral stuff on some of the record, and then some less traditional cello usage on some other songs as well. But it was really a joy. Stephanie Winters is the cellist on every piece of this. She used to play in a duo called the Nudes with Walter Parks, if you remember back in the day. And she's just brilliant. She's world class. And it really, in all honesty, it ought to have her name on the cover. It's really a duo album, if anything.
Well, that gets to a question I had about putting the stuff together. Like, you had these creative constraints for this particular record. Were the songs written then after those constraints were put on, or did you already have the song written and then said, I'm going to try to tell this story with these colors?
Yeah, the latter. That's a really good analogy. It was like, I'm going to paint this picture with this palette of colors. It was exactly that. And Chris Rosser is the producer on the record, and he's just a brilliant producer. And it was such a joy to work with. Chris has produced probably over half of my records, and we're real close friends and know each other well, so it was a joy to work on this.
That's awesome. And I always have to ask, when you're doing these kind of collaborative things with, like the cellist playing such a big part, do you just let them kind of do their thing, or do you have some kind of creative direction where you're like, here's what I'm envisioning? Like, what's your process? What was your process to put this together in the studio?
It really depends on the artist I'm working with. Sometimes I always, my kind of fundamental approach is hire really good people and don't get in the way of them making their art. Let them contribute the gift that's theirs. However, Stephanie's classically trained, and if you say, "Okay, Stephanie, take a solo," she goes, right. She freezes up entirely. She really wants you to write something for her, and then once you've written it, she'll be like, "Well, what if we did this?" Which is great, right? So Chris happily is a very literate musician, which I'm not. So Chris and I could create the parts together in the studio, and I would sing him things, and he would write it out for her, and then she would come in and say, "Okay, that's good, but what if we did this?" And she would make it her own, which she had brilliant ideas to contribute, but she was overwhelmed if you didn't hand her a part to begin with. So.
I love that. I think a lot of people assume that, if you're a great musician, then another musician can just automatically talk to you, and sometimes you need a couple translators along the way. Like, I love that you had to do it to Chris, and then Chris had to give it to her in a format that she could process.
Right. Yeah. But I also love the vocabulary of talking about music in the studio, where you say the most abstract things among musicians and understand each other. It's like, no, that sound is almost right, but it needs to be a little bit browner. Yeah.
Turn up the purple.
Yeah, exactly. And it just makes perfectly good sense.
But it's like a feeling, right? Sometimes that you're trying to get across, and if you used specific words, it might, ruin it.
Well, and there aren't words for some of the things that you want to say. Yeah. You just really can't do that. And that's the whole point of poetry and songwriting to begin with, is kind of to gesture toward things that you can't say, right? Like, I want to paint this picture and point in that direction, but as the Buddhists say, the finger is not the moon.
Well, you mentioned Stephanie Winters, who plays cello on the record. Obviously, the other key part of this other post leg holding up the stool of this record would be the percussion. So tell us about who's playing percussion.
A really brilliant percussionist out of Atlanta named Derek Murphy. And I had him recommended to me, and I've checked out some of the stuff that he was doing, and I thought, this is the right guy for this record. Most of the time, I work with a percussionist in Nashville named River Gagarian, who's a brilliant world percussionist. He's really versatile, and I love working with River. For this particular record, we decided to go with Derek, and he did a beautiful job. It was exquisite. But that's the only thing I've ever worked with him on. It went well. And then there's the vocals, and there's lots of guest vocalists.
I was going to, actually, it's funny. That was the first note I wrote was Vox. So, tell us who else is singing with you.
The last song was Tom Kimmel, and Tom's just got this gorgeous, raspy, beautiful voice, and he's a longtime friend. It was a joy to have him sing on this one. But lots of people are on the record. Holly Figueroa is on here. John Gorka sings on one track.
Past back catalog guest, actually.
Yeah, so, right. Yeah. And actually, and for more connections, we actually recorded John's part at Folk Alliance in Memphis.
Oh, wow.
While we were making the record. Tom Prasada Rao was one of the producers on the record, and along with Chris Rosser. And Tom brought his portable rig, and we recorded John in a hotel room in Memphis. It was amazing. It's such a joy.
It's so funny at these folk music conferences, like where we are this weekend in Lisle, Illinois. So much magic happens, and you kind of never know where it's going to happen. It could happen, in someone's hotel bedroom, and I'm talking about music, by the way. I'm sure other magic happens, but for me, the main magic is sleeping. But but also in the hallways and these late night jam sessions, you just kind of never know where it will happen.
The restaurant last night that was closed. You know,
Oh yeah,
perfect
there was a
venue
big
for a
bluegrass
bluegrass
jam.
jam. Yeah,
That was amazing. Yeah.
Well, I want to reiterate that this is a party, and we during the shows when we record it live, we have people chiming in on YouTube and all these things. So you are our YouTubers chiming in on the real time chat, and it looks like we have a question.
Yeah,
Right?
I'm curious, like how much time did you give yourself in the studio to record with the cellist and the drummer? Was it like was that also constrained, like a concentrated period, or did you take more time?
Yeah. I've done it both ways, and it depends on who I'm working with for a particular record. But on this album, we did it over time because all of us the main musicians were living in Asheville. Okay. It was only the drummer that came in from Atlanta, which is only 4 hours away. But we did all the drum tracks in a couple of days. Okay. And everything else we did over time because we were all there, and it was evolving, and we had that luxury. So.
That was a beautiful song. It was really hard to not clap.
Feel free to
You
clap.
can clap after the song's done, just so you know, folks. It's a great question. Any other questions before we move on to the next song? Yeah.
Just wondering, so with so many different vocalists, how do you, especially going to Folk Alliance, you've got thousands of voices to choose from. How did you hear what you wanted and determine who was right for each song?
So people's emotional tone and vocal texture is what you're looking for. So for me, it's very much like cooking. You get to a point in the recipe and you're like, I gotta have cumin right here, and needs more basil, and it's gotta be fresh basil. Please go to the Garden Love and grab me some basil. And for this record, and there's also the fact that there are things that are beautiful that don't go well together, just like a recipe, right? I don't put ice cream in my chili. I like both things, but it doesn't work. And so there are people whose voices I adore, and they don't blend with mine. So you got to find that,
And like cooking, it can be experimental, right? Sometimes
Exactly.
you don't know until you try it.
You try stuff.
Sometimes you have suspicions like ice cream in the chili, but
Right.
But I've never tried it, so technically I don't really know.
The bummer being that as far as I know, the cumin isn't offended if I that didn't work.
Right, whereas in real life, you're like, I want to have my friends sing on my record.
Yeah, that's not actually on the record, sorry.
Yeah. Well, we want to hear more music. You guys want to hear more music? Yes.
Music's good.
So the next track you picked to feature on today's edition of the Back Catalog Listening Party is Keep the Change. Is there anything you want to say before we take a listen?
Two things really briefly. One, this is the song where I put the credit card in the strings. I was noodling around with my guitar in my living room one day and did not notice when I picked up my guitar that I had a pick stuck woven into the strings. And so I went to play it, and it gave me this horrific sound, but it was also kind of interesting. I grew up my folks lived in Africa before I was born, and I grew up in a house with lots of African stuff around, including kalimbas, these old rattly and generally out of tune kalimbas that were intentionally rattly. And when I heard that sound, I thought, that sounds kind of like those kalimbas. And so I wrote a song with the guitar pick stuck in the strings, but it kept falling out. So I went in the next room, got some scissors and a credit card, and you can bend a credit card and it won't break. So I cut a little strip of credit card and stuck it in the strings, just woven in 3 of the strings. And that gave me this sound, which was really fun to play with. And right at the time that I was doing that, I had just had this conversation with my brother-in-law, and I was whining about something. I don't remember what now, but something I didn't want to change in my life that was changing. And I was whining about it to my wise brother-in-law, and he said, well, if you don't like change, there's always another option. And I said, really? He said, yeah, you could just die. Okay, so I got his point right. If I'm going to be alive, it's going to be change, get used to it, right. And so those things came together to be this song. And this is also the first album I made after I got married. So there was a lot of change in my life at that time, and various others as well.
All right, well, let's give it a listen. This is David LaMotte. Keep the Change here on the Back Catalog Listening Party.
years ago now, you were waiting tables and wiping chairs. He never looked up from his menu, like you weren't even there. You just knew that he would stiff you, so put together and self-absorbed. He slapped a 50 on the ticket, and he muttered these few words. He said, there isn't much you get to keep. Here's a little tip, keep the change. So this morning you were driving, it came screaming through your head how 19 turned to 40, like yellow turned to red, how waitress turned to mother, how love bug turned to van, how that money turned to nothing when he put it in your hand and said there isn't much you get to keep. Here's a little tip, keep the change. Just a rich guy in a diner left a bad joke with his bill. The cash was gone by Sunday, but the words are ringing still. So now you're crouching in the front yard with your fingers in the ground, and the weeds keep pushing up while your own body's slowing down. Don't waste your breath on wishing, no need to raise your voice. Change is always optional if dying is a choice, and there isn't much you get to keep. Here's a little tip, keep the change.
David LaMotte with Keep the Change from his 2006 album Change, which we are revisiting today on the back catalog listening party with David LaMotte joining us. Again, my name is Mother Banjo.
My name is Anthony Rigg.
And we're your regular hosts for the show. Normally, everyone is doing this remotely from their various wireless locations, but today we are taping this at the Folk Alliance Regional Midwest Conference in Lisle, Illinois, just outside Chicago. And again, Keep the Change was such a clever title for what the song's about. But the album is called Change, and you were mentioning that you had a lot of personal change in your life. Was that a theme that came on the record, like just because you realized, oh, this is what I'm writing about, or is this a more intentional?
Yeah, I never set out to write a certain set of songs about something. I just kind of see what this collection of songs is and what are the overarching themes. But yeah, I had just gotten married, and that was a very big deal. The phrase change can also mean playing the changes, right? The chord changes. And then also, I was about 10 years into doing some work in Guatemala. My wife and I started a nonprofit down there a really long time ago now. We're coming up on our 20th anniversary for that. And we talked a lot about how really small amounts of money can make a really big impact in a country like Guatemala. US dollars go really far. And so just pocket change, was another thing that influenced that choice. And that song, started with a dad joke, basically, but I tried to turn it around, take it a little bit deeper. So.
I also love that, sort of change, and then you can think of sort of the, not just life changes, but also like proactive change, right?
Yeah,
like in a more social justice-y kind of approach. And you just put out a book with a similar kind of feeling. So can you tell us a little bit about the book?
It's a bit of a thread through my career. The most recent book came out just this summer. It's called You Are Changing the World, Whether You Like It or Not. It's on Chalice Press, and it's really an examination of how large-scale change happens versus how we tell the story. Because I think we tell the story backwards. They're kind of there's a dominant narrative of large-scale change, which is that if you got a big problem, what you need is somebody special to do something dramatic in a moment of crisis, and then you fix the problem and roll the credits. That's never happened in the history of the world on a large scale. It happens individually, but no large-scale change ever happens without a movement. Sometimes it happens without a hero, but it never happens without a movement. And that's good news for those of us who'd like to have a positive impact, because it means you don't actually have to be Gandhi, you just have to show up to the meeting, right? And that's a good reminder for me when I'm reading the headlines and feeling powerless, that part of why I'm feeling powerless is because I have the wrong understanding of how power works. So that's really what the book's about.
That's fantastic. And I imagine the book, this record, and links to your organization are all on your website.
They are.
Can you? What is the URL for the folks out there listening?
So by the time this airs, we're just launching a brand new website. Almost 20 years in, the organization's getting a new name and new branding and all the things. It's been called PEG Partners, and I have to explain why that's called that. So we decided to change it to something we don't have to explain. It's now called Senderos, which means pathways in Spanish.
Excellent. And your website URL?
I'm davidlamotte.com. So if you can spell Lamotte, you're golden.
It's got an E at the end.
Yes.
It's got an E and no N in it. Everybody likes to be LaMotte, but it's not that.
Well, we will definitely be putting links to the book, the CD, and this organization in our show notes, which will be on our website, backcataloglisteningparty.com. Now, speaking of CDs, a lot of our regular listeners love to purchase the physical CD as a memento and to have liner notes. And you mentioned before we started that you have like the last remaining copy.
It's a tragic failure of marketing. I chose an album that's out of print.
Well, I imagine it's still available digitally.
It's available digitally, and in fact, you can download it digitally from my website if you want to support me in that way. But really, feel free to pick it up anywhere you like. And
So if you see it on eBay or see it in your friend's
Yeah.
like closet,
snag it. Just
snag
slip
it.
it in your coat.
And we should mention, as we do pretty much every show, that no matter how you're listening, whether you're joining us in the room here at the Folk Alliance Regional Midwest Conference, listening through a PA, or whether you are streaming on YouTube through your phone or your earbuds, that no matter how good these songs sound, and they're fantastic songs, they will sound better when you get the high-res digital files. So so definitely encourage you to both support David's music and get the best version of this album by downloading the tracks from him.
And David, are the liner notes available on your website, or could they be?
Actually, if folks order it through my website, then they get a PDF of the liner notes.
Because I was admiring his liner notes. Another thing we talked about before we started is how we're both liner note nerds, and I'm sure a lot of people here are. That's how you find out all the juicy details: who's playing, who's producing. And I also noticed that you had guitar tunings.
I have all the tunings in there, and I always write where I wrote the song. Except for my most recent album, which was all pandemic stuff, so it's all in my house.
Living room, bathroom.
Exactly. Right.
So that's another reason to pick it up, so you can get those liner notes. He's got the lyrics, he's got the guitar tunings that he's using, and is that something that are you changing tunings per song, or like that seems
Constantly? Yeah.
Okay. Mm-hmm. Do you keep multiple guitars with you then when you're traveling?
If I'm flying, I take one and I tune more. But if I'm driving, I'll often bring three.
So is that like an option when people book you for a show? They're like, well, I want David LaMotte and I want all the weird tunings, but I don't want to have as much time of the show tuning. So we're going to allow you some time to drive.
You can
extra
upsell
money.
that. Just upsell that. Yeah, the extra baggage fee and all that. Yeah.
Extra tuning fee. We got questions. So let's start with you in the back, since you haven't asked a question yet.
Question: did you take the credit card on the road?
Yes, so I keep them with me all the time. I've got a little pedal bag that I use that I had made by this woman in Durham, North Carolina, who makes wedding dresses for a living, and I hired her to create this pedal bag for me that's fabric and padded and has all the pockets that I want in the lid that folds up. And it's soft, so I can pack it in with my clothes and my big suitcase when I'm on the road. But it's super durable. It's made out of all this crazy heavy material and big thick zippers and all that stuff. And I've got a pocket in there that's just for little strips of credit card.
I was going to ask earlier when you were talking about how you put the credit card in your thing and you had to cut up the thing, and I was just imagining the conversation with your credit card company. I need a replacement credit card. Like, why? Did you lose it? Did it get stolen?
No, is that a gig?
I was recording my album.
I have had some funny experiences like that. I was at Sundilla down in Alabama back in the day, and I introduced the song and then looked down and realized I didn't have one. And I was like, oh no. But I had done this long introduction for the song. I couldn't like bail out of it, and it wasn't going to work without the thing. And so I just said, hey, anybody got a credit card I can cut up? And everybody laughed, and I was like, no, I'm serious. Anybody have any, like, hotel key, anything that's like that, can I cut it? And this woman in the back said, kind of tapped her husband. He gave her something. She gave it to me. And I bent it while I told a little more story, and I cut it just by bending it back and forth and tore it, stuck it in my guitar, and played the song. Finished the show. And after the show, she came up to me and she said, I don't want to alienate any of our visitors, but she said, man, I've been trying to get him. Did you look at what I gave you? And I said, no, I just tore it up. She said, take a look at it. And I went back up to the stage. It was his membership card in a certain political party that it won't be named. She said, I've been trying to get him to cut that up for years.
I love that. Okay, we have one more question, then we're going to jump into the next song.
I was just curious if you ever got to tour, since you said that the constraints were set up with who would you tour with. Did you ever get to go on that tour?
Yeah, so I've never really toured that arrangement, and it's funny because I just recently met a cellist in my hometown that I really want to. I'm full of ideas at the moment. Exactly. So every time I put out an album, I do a big release party at a large venue, and that's always a joy. And we did that for this record, but I've never really toured that way, and I still really like to.
Mm-hmm. Well, we want more music. I want more of David LaMotte. So the next track you picked to feature on today's show is "Crawl Inside."
Yeah, Tom Prasada Rao and Carrie Cooper are both dear friends of mine, and at that time they were a couple and had a duo called the Dreamsicles, and they sing on this song. I wrote it about a friend of mine who was being cruel to a friend of mine, which was herself, and I wanted to defend her, but I didn't know how to do that because it was her, and I just wanted her to cut it out because I adore her and still do. And so I wrote her this song to say the things, you can say things in songs you can't say in conversation that just aren't appropriate to say to your friend, but you can write a song about it, it's okay. And so I played her the song without saying it was about her, and she was like, okay, thanks, and she totally got it, and she felt loved. She didn't feel critique, she felt loved. And what's awesome is she's pretty much quit doing it. So I take full responsibility for her personal growth. It's great. So.
All right, well, let's give it a listen. This is David LaMotte, "Crawl Inside," here on the Back Catalog Listening Party.
Gonna crawl inside your head, gonna move a few things around. You got your furniture up against the doors, it's bound to be slowing you down. You've been getting in your own way, and that's a silly thing to do. I'm gonna crawl inside your head and make it work a little better for you. Gonna crawl inside. Gonna crawl inside. Gonna crawl inside. Gonna crawl inside. Gonna crawl inside your heart. Gonna bring a whole bunch of paint. 'Cause from the outside it's so beautiful, and from the inside it just ain't. And I know this will be hard for you, but your graffiti's gotta go. Gonna crawl inside your heart so you can see what we all know. I'm gonna crawl inside. I'm gonna crawl inside. soul. Gonna cook you up a little meal. You've been feeding yourself this garbage, makes you feel the way you feel. I mean, you got junk in your refrigerator that's way, way overdue. I'm gonna crawl inside your soul and give you something that's good for you. Gonna crawl inside. I'm gonna crawl inside. I'm gonna crawl inside. I'm gonna crawl inside. And then when we've got the dishes washed, soak the brushes in turpentine. I was wondering if you might have a minute to help me work on mine. Gonna crawl inside. Gonna crawl inside. Gonna crawl inside. Gonna crawl inside. Yeah.
David LaMotte with Crawl Inside from his 2006 album Change, which we're revisiting today on the Back Catalog Listening Party with David LaMotte. And we were just saying, I was like, that doesn't sound like Carrie or Tom.
Oh, no.
Definitely not Tom.
Sorry.
And
No, it's neither one. They sing on a different song on the as carefully as I crafted the liner notes. I didn't actually read them very closely this morning, apparently. But that was Beth Wood, who's my dear friend and an amazing collaborator. She sings on almost everything I do because she's astounding. And yeah, she's great. And Tom and Carrie sing on another song called Your Smile that I wrote for Special Olympics.
I love the rhythms that you're getting out of that cello.
Well, big props
with
to
the
Stephanie.
percussion. Yeah.
Right? I mean, I wish she were here to receive the applause, but she's awesome. She's super talented.
And you had said you recorded the percussion parts first, which makes sense. But also, it's amazing because it feels so like they're really call and response.
Yeah. I mean, the way we usually do it in the studio is we record scratches to a click, and then the percussionist plays to that. And Chris generally tightens it up a little bit, maybe when I'm not looking, nudges it a bit, and then the percussionist plays to that, and then we throw away the scratch and start back from there. So.
It sounds fantastic. Again, if you want to get your own copy, you can head over to David's website, which we will link to in the show notes.
Yeah, and again, just a reminder, if anyone has any questions as we go here in the audience, we're recording live at the Folk Alliance Regional Midwest Conference outside Chicago. Feel free to raise your hand, and we'll get to you when you can. Oh, here's one right here.
Obvious question with the title, given 15 plus years of experience in life, what changes would you make to this album if you recorded it?
Oh man, that is a great question. I should have seen that coming. So the only thing I've heard listening back in this iteration is that I couldn't help but really note that Keep the Change has sped up a little bit over the years, and it feels a little. I would like to kick that up a bit, but there's not much I would change about this record. I think hopefully you grow as an artist as you go, but you can't expect your yearbook picture to change with you, right? This is a moment in my life almost 20 years ago, 18 years ago. This album's old enough to, vote. And this is a really true representation of where I was there, and I'm proud of it, and I treasure it in a nostalgic kind of way. It's not who I am now. It doesn't sound like the newest record still, but it's I'm proud of it. It's an honest representation of where I was then.
And that's one of the things we love most about doing this show is that albums are a place in time.
Right.
That and I don't think that the album format will go away. I know there's a lot. Oh, it's all singles now, and we just do that. But you can't take that time out of the equation and who you were at the time and those collections of songs then tell that story.
Right. And I find the language really fascinating around that, right? An album's like a photo album.
Yeah.
And it's a record of things that occurred.
Yeah.
Right? That's what it is.
Excellent.
And again, if you would like to get a record of the record. That doesn't make sense. Anyway, if you'd like the tracks in all their glory, their high res versions, you'll want to do that, because if you're digging the music as we are, you'll want to do that. Again, it's out of print, but you can get the high-res digital files directly from davidlamotte.com, and you can get all those liner notes and the tunings. So I don't know if he gives the instructions about the credit cards, but you might be able to reach out to him or talk to him here
Happy
at
to
Folk
show
Alliance,
that.
and he can give you the little tips.
Bonus merch, maybe. You can just
Yeah,
cut up
exactly. It's just old credit cards.
And if you buy 8 of them, you can put it together and have a credit card. It's great. Yeah.
Charge all your expenses to davidlamotte.com.
Exactly.
Well, this is a great opportunity to thank you all for being here. We're going to get to one more song, but we want to thank Folk Alliance Region Midwest for having us to do this, for David LaMotte for joining us, and for all of you for participating in the conversation, and to our Patreon supporters. And these are the folks that keep this show going. We started during the pandemic, and we kept going because people still wanted to hear those old records and talk about them and do that deep dive into even beyond the liner notes. And we want to thank these folks who make that possible: Penny, Anna, Linda, Bevan, Connie, Vaughn, Alan, Chris, Alex, Becky, Galen, Peggy, Joe, Jim, Beverly, John, Fred, Tim, Sarah, David, Jocelyn, Court, Matt, Steve, Mark, Homestead, Pick and Parlor, Severin, Lynn, Mary, Many Tracks, Nikki, Joni, David, Sarah, C, CJ, Wiley, and Stephanie, and maybe you, if you want to support the show. And we were just cooking up a special thing we're going to do for our joint Patreon supporters, a special live stream event we're going to do. So if you want to participate in that, patreon.com/back catalog listening party. But mainly the real joy is just getting to do this with artists and with all of you, whether you're in person or tuned in online. You are what make the show interesting, the conversation around the music.
And the music changes when you listen together. It's remarkable what happens when you're not just doing it by yourself. So we appreciate all of you for being here, and David as well. But we do have one more track that we want to make sure we get in here before the end of the hour. It looks like "Let Me Go" is the name of the tune. Is there anything that you want to say about this one?
I find it fascinating when you write a song about something that hasn't happened yet, right? This song came to be about somebody that I love very much who I was losing, but that's not what it was when I wrote it. When I wrote it, there were a lot of headlines in that time about a family in Florida. The woman was on life support but was dying, and the parents and the husband had differing opinions on whether or not to let her go. And I thought, the problem was that she hadn't told anybody what she wanted. And I thought, I'm going to be clear about this. So this song's kind of my living will, but it's also just a treasuring of things whose season has passed, and someday that'll be me, right? But this album's called Change, and there are a lot of things that were changing in my life then and still are now, because that's what it is to be alive. But I think it's so important to be able to treasure, like when people talk about a failed marriage, I'm like, no, it's over. That doesn't mean it failed, right? Maybe it's failed, I don't know, but that's a really problematic language to me. Like, this happened for a time. There was beauty in it. There was pain. There was hardship. Now it's over. Something else is happening, right? And I want to be able to let things go in my life, celebrate them, and make space for new things. And so I guess that was how I chose to close the album.
Excellent. Well, it's a great way to close our hour with you. This is David LaMotte. Let It Go here on the Back Catalog Listening Party. Sorry.
And also, I should say it's "Let Me Go," not "Let It Go." Not to be confused with the Frozen track.
All right. Well, the good thing is we can just edit all this stuff out.
On my next record, I'm going to do Frozen.
Yeah, with cello and credit card.
Let's try that again. This is David LaMotte. Let Me Go here on the Back Catalog Listening Party.
It's been such a nourishing evening. The laughter, the food, and the wine. I admit to a bit of soft sorrow to come to the end of this time. Mostly I'm warmed by your kindness, lifted by stories you told. They will sing me back home through the darkness, like a wind at my back down the road. Let me go, let me go, like the last leaf of autumn, the last April snow. Let me go, let me go. Time is a river, rivers will flow. Let me go. And when I come to the end of the highway, when at last the long journey is through, I will stand at the door and remember the time was spent well here with you. So raise your glass in a toast to real living. Kill the wine while the candle burns low. Spend a moment to savor the moment. Draw me close and then just let me go. Let me go. Let me go. Like the last leaf of autumn, the last April snow. Let me go. Let me go. Time is a river, and rivers will flow. The hour and the daylight are passing. We reach for a fist full of wind. Give me your hand and your blessing, and I'll pray that I'll see you again. Let me go.
Let me go.
Let me go.
Let me go.
Like the last leaf of autumn, the last April snow. Let me go.
Let me go.
Let me go.
Let me go.
Time is a river, and rivers will flow. Let me go.
David LaMotte, Let Me Go, from his 2006 album Change, with, I mean, unmistakable John Gorka on that track. Wow.
Yeah.
I don't.
What a powerful.
That's funny. I hope that's not completely self-absorbed to get teary listening to that song, but there I am.
Yeah. Well, is your analogy earlier with the photo album? It makes sense.
It does. I think you're exactly right.
There's so many different emotions when you. A lot of us artists don't go back and listen to our own records, but when you have that opportunity, sometimes you remember so many things. Sometimes you hear something in the song itself or the recording, but you also have a lot of memories.
Yeah, it takes you right back there. And the honest feeling that was in my heart there, along with some memories that tug on me, was, wow, I'm really honored to have been a part of that. It's yeah. I heard an artist at Kerrville one time years ago. He was introducing a song and he said, "I love this song," and I thought, huh. And he said, "I'm sorry, maybe that sounds really arrogant, but I've written a lot of songs. I'm not playing you the ones I don't love." And I thought, awesome, like that. What a beautiful modeling that was for me you can embrace that. I think that's really beautiful, and I'm proud of it. But I'm also just really humbled because I had a part of that. But there was a lot of other people giving a lot of their hearts to make it happen. It's cool to just get to stand in that circle as it is to stand in this circle.
Yeah, and I just want to thank you for sharing your music, these stories, and as you said, to be part of this community where we're taping today's edition of Back Catalog Listening Party at the Folk Alliance Regional Midwest Conference, the Farm Conference in just outside Chicago, and it's been so special to get to hear so many amazing artists and songwriters and form those relationships, which is kind of what the purpose of this show is all about. Even though we don't always get to gather in person, getting to make those connections through music, which I think is a really powerful way to do it. So we're really grateful.
Yeah, and hearing maybe new things in old songs. Yeah. And just like good stories, they keep growing and evolving and touching people in different ways. And if you like that kind of thing, we definitely would love to have you tune in every Friday here at the Back Catalog Listening Party, because every week, unfortunately not with David every week, but
and not in person,
and not in person every week. But that's what it is. We get to kind of experience that photo album of their history, but then also kind of listen to maybe songs you've already heard with new ears. And that's a really special thing.
Yeah, and if you like it, if you're watching, you can like it on YouTube, give it a thumbs up, direct more of the bots and algorithms David's way. And of course, you can follow David LaMotte on all the places, and go to davidlamotte.com to buy his new book, to buy the digital files and get the liner notes from this record we've been revisiting today, Change, as well as all the other albums and things that you're up to and show dates and all that kind of stuff.
Is that a copy of your new book you have right there?
It is.
Why don't you hold that up so people can see it?
Yeah, it's called "You Are Changing the World Whether You Like It or Not." Yeah. And I'm just so grateful for this hospitality and the rich conversation and the work y'all are doing to reintroduce all of us to our own hearts and weave the fabric of society back together in a time when people are shredding it pretty actively. So thanks for doing this work. It matters.
Likewise, thank you.
Yeah, and thank you all for being here here at the Folk Alliance Regional Midwest Conference, and hopefully we'll see you all back online or in person very soon. And
until then, one more time for David LaMotte.
Yeah, David LaMotte.
We usually end our show with a little cheers, so cheers, everybody.
Cheers. Till we see you next time.